say from the legal perspective on the case that I think might help satisfy some of your answers. And then at that point, the sheriff and I are going to take questions. We will take a reasonable amount of questions until it becomes either redundant or we'll wore out. And at that point, you know, we'll give you a warning, like I guess they do on the real things. You got 2 more to say or something like that. So first of all, in terms of the process, as I indicated, the format will be the sheriff is going to talk, I'm going to talk, then we'll do the questions and answers. So I really would appreciate it, and I don't think this will be a problem because we're going to stick around, is to save your questions until after we've completed our, at least what we consider canned remarks, or whatever you call it in your industry. Secondly, although I realize, just like I hope most of you all realize, we have different roles and responsibilities in connection with what we do in this, and we all know that this is a very serious situation, that we're not going to answer questions involving the specifics of this case and the timelines of this case or the names of the people involved in this case. I think probably most of you as veteran reporters understand the reason that we're not doing this. We're not trying to be difficult, but this is an ongoing investigation. I think that's something that the sheriff and I feel very strongly about. So to the extent that you try to do your jobs and pry that kind of information out of us, I think you're going to find us to be a tough sell. Thirdly, in the future, many of you have generously called both the sheriff and I to appear on all kinds of programs from, I won't even announce it, so I don't want to give them any publicity, but all of the high primetime talk show things. And I want you to know, so that you all know, so you don't waste your time and your producer's time, anybody else's time, the sheriff and I are not going on any TV programs. We are not going to be making any public statements about this case except in a press conference format. All future information about the case will come out of Chris Pappas, Chris is the PIO for the Sheriff's Department, or on the websites of either department. We both have websites. We're not trying to be difficult, but I think you have to understand the sheriff and I have a responsibility to the citizens of this county. We have busy schedules in terms of what we're doing and the cases that we're handling and other investigations, and we just can't have our switchboards taken down trying to answer press inquiries. I think we're trying to be reasonable and set up a process that can help you do your job while we can continue to do our job to protect the citizens of Santa Barbara County. And I hope you'll understand that. Without further ado, as they say, I want to introduce to you a good friend of mine and the current sheriff of Santa Barbara County, Jim Anderson. Sheriff.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yesterday morning at around 8:30 a.m., investigators from the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department, Santa Barbara District Attorney's Office, served a search warrant at Neverland Ranch in Los Olivos. Simultaneous to the service of the warrant at Neverland Ranch, 2 search warrants were also served in Southern California. Approximately 70 investigators from the Sheriff's Department and the District Attorney's Office were involved in the service of this warrant at Neverland Ranch. The operation was concluded around 11 p.m. last night. The service of the warrants was part of an ongoing investigation alleging criminal misconduct on the part of Michael Jackson. The basis for this investigation regarding Mr. Jackson involves allegations of child molestation, 288A of the California Penal Code. Additionally, an arrest warrant for Mr. Jackson has been issued on multiple counts of child molestation. The bail amount on the warrant has been set at $3 million. At this point in time, Mr. Jackson's been given an opportunity to surrender himself to the custody of the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department within a specified period of time. We are currently working with Mr. Jackson's legal representation on this matter. Mr. Jackson has also been directed to surrender his passport when he's taken into custody. While we appreciate the level of interest generated by this case, the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department is committed to maintaining the integrity of this investigation with respects to both legal and ethical considerations. We will not be commenting on issues specific to the investigation beyond what has already been released.
Thank you, Jim. Let me just add a few things to what the sheriff has said from the perspective of the district attorney's office, and we do have some releases in writing that you can get. Either they've been passed out already or you'll get them afterwards. Commonly in these kinds of cases, but let me clarify something because some of you aren't lawyers and I don't want you to get it wrong. There's a 288 and there's a 288A. There's a 288 paren small a, which is the child molesting section. 288A is another offense. Just so you all understand, we are talking about a violation of 288 paren small a, child molesting, not oral copulation of an adult or of children, okay? So I want to clarify that so that you understand that. Secondly, ordinarily, sometimes either my staff or myself are asked in cases like this what the penalties are. In California, we have the determinate sentence. The determinate sentence means that the legislature set a time frame upon conviction if, worst case scenario, the judge decides to send a person to state prison. In this particular case, the triad is 3 years, 6 years, and 8 years. So the minimum would be 3, the maximum would be 8 for the single count. We are filing multiple counts, so potentially, if we get to the point where there is a conviction and a sentencing, the judge would have the discretion at that point to give multiple consecutive sentences, and the limits on the judge at that point are 1/3 of the middle term, which would be an additional 2 years, you can do the math, for each additional one consecutive. That is not mandatory, it's discretionary. I'm not suggesting to you that any of this could happen, but I'm asked routinely what is the outside worst case scenario, and I'm just trying to give you that. I don't want anybody to imply from anything that I've said or any remarks that I said that any one of those things is going to happen, but that's just what the sentencing time frames are. One thing I want to emphasize, and I'm saying this because I couldn't resist the temptation to watch a little bit of some of this coverage last night on TV. And I heard a lot of apologists for Mr. Jackson say some things that I think the sheriff and I can talk about that I think are important for you as the media and for the public who is going to hear these things to be told. I heard a lot of people saying it was deja vu. I heard a lot of people saying it was another ripoff by some family to get money. I want to make several things clear about why this is different from the last investigation. Number one, it is different because the law in California has changed, and it was changed specifically because of the 1993-94 Michael Jackson investigation. The law in California at that time provided that a child victim could not be forced to testify in a child molest proceedings without their permission and consent and cooperation. As a result of the Michael Jackson case, the legislature changed that law, and that is no longer the law in California. Secondly, as you all know, or most of you know, either from being involved or knowing about that investigation, there were never any charges brought in that investigation. No warrant issued. There is a warrant outstanding, and I can assure you that within a very short period of time, there will be charges filed against Mr. Jackson, multiple counts. That's different. Third, at the time of the investigation, I just hit somebody off, but it's TV Aztec, whoever you are. Sorry, apologize. Just got carried away here. It won't, there's no room up here. You folks have... I'll just hang on. Then I don't have to worry about knocking any more off. Yeah. All right, third. Here we go. Third is that at the time of the investigation in 1993 and 94, as those of you who have followed that know, there was a contemporaneous civil case that was filed by attorney Larry Feldman in Los Angeles. And that case was filed almost immediately at the same time that our office and the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office was notified of the allegations, and we commenced our investigations. That civil case culminated prior to the completion of our investigation. I say completion because at the time that civil settlement went down, the victim indicated to us that they were no longer interested in cooperating criminally. There is no civil case filed, and there is no anticipation that there will be a civil case filed in this particular case. And the last reason that this is different, in this particular case, we have a cooperative victim in this particular proceeding. So I think there's some things that are very different about what's going on today and what occurred before. Another thing that I think that the sheriff and I feel concerned that we want to clarify about allegations that we've heard. There's been, even Jackson himself, I believe, has said that this was all done to try to ruin his new CD that was coming out, or whatever it is he's doing. Like, the sheriff and I really are into that kind of music. But the fact of the matter, and all my kids are grown now pretty much, so, but the fact of the matter is, what you need to know is that in actuality, we had no knowledge of that prior to the time that we determined the date of the execution of this, and in fact, we were going to execute these warrants several weeks ago, but had to put it off because of all the visitors we had come up here, the 50,000 people that came in for Halloween. So it really has nothing to do with his album or whatever else he's doing in his life. We don't track him. So I think it's important for people to know that. We've been ready to do this for some period of time, and it was just an operational thing within the Sheriff's Department because of the tremendous manpower, person power that they had to put out for the Halloween thing. And the last question before we'll open it up is, I know you're probably going to ask some questions about Child Protective Services, both in Los Angeles and Santa Barbara. Child Protective Services, at this point in time, is not involved in these investigations. There were some previous contacts by folks in the Los Angeles Child Protective Services involving some other things that came out when the don't assume from that I'm talking about the same family. I'm just telling you there was Child Protective Services involvement and other allegations involving Mr. Jackson in Los Angeles. And there has been no involvement on either one of those departments and any one of those things involving any of that information. This has solely been an operation run by the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department, and I have been advising them, and the members of my staff have been advising them on the legal issues involved in the investigation. Whether they will get involved, obviously that there's going to be, at least the local Santa Barbara people, where it's pertinent, will be notified of it, and what they do, they do. Just so some of you who are really sharp understand, in Santa Barbara, the DA's office handles the 300 petitions, so we will be conflicting out of that and having the court request that they appoint other counsel so that there's no allegations that we're involved in that process and get information from that process, and it's an arm length. And we build a firewall involved in that, so it's just a different thing. But we will not be involved in that. There'll be separate counsel appointed to represent the Department of Child Services in Santa Barbara. Sheriff, did you have anything you wanted to add before we open them up?
Just that we have copies of the news release this morning to provide to you, both from the Sheriff's Department and the District Attorney's Office. And I will go ahead and open it up for questions.
Could Jackson be a flight risk? Could he be a flight risk?
There's always that potential, but we are actively pursuing the arrest warrant at this time.
Why are you waiting to file charges? Are you waiting to see if, in fact, he cooperates and surrenders as vis-a-vis you have to go arrest him? Is that why you're waiting to file the charges?
The filing of the charges had nothing to do with that. I know it may seem simple to people to get together in a search warrant for several different places and stuff like that, but it's just a matter of a decision that we made to do a Ramey warrant, an affidavit, get a judicial authorization, and it gives us time to go back and do the formal charging at another time. That's all it was. It's just,
Surrender.
we're not going to discuss the time frame for surrender. All right.
We're going to go one at a time.
Could his children be taken away from him, Mr. Sneddon?
I beg your pardon?
Could Michael Jackson's children be taken away from him?
That's a decision that would be made by a juvenile court.
Where is he served? Do you know where he is right now?
No, we do not.
The other two search warrants, please.
I beg your pardon?
You mentioned two other search warrants that were California.
Yes, there were two other warrants.
Give us the details of those, please.
I'm not going to get into the detail of those, but we did serve two in Southern California, and we did acquire additional property.
Can you talk about what, when, where, why?
It was yesterday, same time as the search warrant was served here in Santa Barbara County.
In general terms, sir, can you just talk about, in general, what you all were looking for?
Items of evidence that would corroborate the victim's statements.
As much as you can talk about, can you say what you all believed happened and why the evidence was compelling enough to issue an arrest warrant?
We're not going to get into specifics of the case.
When did this 12-year-old parent come forward? When were you notified?
We want to clarify something. There is an affidavit in this particular case, and that affidavit has been sealed for 45 days and will not be released for 45 days in order for us to complete the investigation.
When did this start? When did it start?
This gentleman here has a question.
Yes, when did this start? When did this 12-year-old's parents come forward and notify you?
You assumed things that we haven't said, okay? So we're not going to answer that
Sir,
question.
we learned that it was attorney Larry Feldman who caused the boy to come to the sheriff's office and talk to the DA's office. Can you confirm that your office has had discussions with attorney Larry Feldman?
No.
You've asked him to surrender his passport. How realistically do you think it is that he might flee overseas?
Well, there's always that possibility, but I believe he's willing to cooperate with us and turn over his passport at this point.
Sheriff, is Mark Garagos representing Mr. Jackson? Is Mr. Garagos representing Mr. Jackson today?
I believe that is correct.
That's what was represented to me in my conversation with him.
Do any of the allegations stand for counts? Over what period of time did this occur?
We're not
And
going to
when?
discuss that.
What year?
Not
Has
gonna discuss
children been taken into protective custody already?
what children.
His own children?
They're not within the, at this point in time, they're not in California.
Is there a possibility of any other victims, just one gentleman?
Yes, there is that possibility, and we would encourage the public to come forward if they have any information whatsoever that would lead us to believe there are other victims in the community to contact us so that we can follow up on that information.
Gentlemen, how many
Are these multiple counts only involving the one child?
I'm not going to answer that. This lady right here with her hand up in the white.
Can you compel him to testify?
I just wanted to know if you do not know where Michael Jackson is at this moment, but how soon, like if he doesn't turn himself in by a certain time, what will then happen? And how long is that time designated to have himself turn himself
You'll
in?
know about it when it gets there.
How sure are you?
given special treatment because of this arrangement to turn himself
Hold on.
John, you're the worst person to be asking that question because you know in this county that we have traditionally done that for other people as a courtesy.
Would you do it for any member
And
of
we've
the
done it
public?
for other people and we're not
Any
doing
member of the
anything
public?
different. You know that.
Would you do it for any member of the public?
We have.
arrangement to turn themselves in
Depending
so
on
that
the
they don't be seen with handcuffs on them?
Depending on, we haven't
On a
said that.
case-by-case
Are you
basis,
confident
yes.
that your victim's willing to testify this time?
Yes.
Why is
The
that?
allegations that last documentary,
You mentioned multiple counts.
How many counts are
How
there?
many counts?
We're not going to say.
And why won't you say that if there's more than one child now or not? Why?
I'm not.
Will there be a charging document released?
Yes, when we file it.
Hold on. This gentleman back here.
Is the district attorney's office right now in any sort of deal-making with Michael Jackson's attorneys, whoever they should be at this point? Is there any sort of deal? You're talking about a surrender, a possible deal, anything like that?
A deal to surrender himself or a deal?
Well, let's talk about both.
I wouldn't comment on either one of those. But we've been in contact with his lawyer.
Is he in Las Vegas since we've been here?
I'm sorry?
Is he still in Las Vegas?
I don't know. I mean, we really have a life other than Michael Jackson, and we've been really trying to work on our investigation. As you well know, because I saw it on TV before I came down here, the last word I had on somebody standing out front of a hotel was that he was still there. But then there was some other people who said they saw him leave last night. So that you get these conflicting testimonies about what's going on.
Sir, you have dealt with the Jackson case for so long. You have been involved with this case.
Hold on a second. Let him
You have
answer.
dealt with this case for a number of years. You were involved 10 years ago. Can you talk about your satisfaction in finally bringing Michael Jackson, in your mind, to justice? And can you talk about, do you feel he has a problem dealing with children?
All right, first of all, I haven't been dealing with Michael Jackson for anything. When that case went to bed 10 years ago, it was out of my mind. You folks and people keep calling every time he does a bizarre thing to ask me my comment about it. But I really do have a lot of things going on, as does the sheriff and this former sheriff and people in my office. We really have a very busy office. I haven't given it a passing thought. My feelings about this is that I'm sad that there is another victim out there. I feel bad for the family. I feel bad for the victim. Beyond that, I think it's a sad thing for all the people involved in this thing, quite frankly.
Isn't there a sense in your office that perhaps he bought his way out of those charges 10 years ago, and now he may have the goods?
That he bought his way out?
Is there a sense in your office that he bought that?
I think there's a sense in the public he did that, and which my wife laid off on me and my office.
Hold on. This lady back here.
Yes. Did you say, Mr. Sneddon, just a couple minutes ago, that Michael Jackson's children are out of California?
They're in Las Vegas, but does the law...
She answered your question for you.
She answered.
Does the law call for them to be taken into protective custody as a matter of course if his father is under arrest for molestation charges if he returns to California?
Not
If they
necessarily.
return to California?
Not at this point in time, no.
Wait a minute, you can have a father charged with sexual abuse of a minor and leave the children in the home with that father?
Everyone is innocent until convicted.
Is the child adult, a boy or a girl?
Not going to talk about that.
Sure.
Well, you can tell from the charges it has to be a child.
Wait, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Sheriff, I'm a little confused. If you had 70 guys out at this ranch, you didn't know where Michael Jackson was yesterday, and if you considered this to be a possible flight risk, why would you not have known?
We had an idea where he might be. That wasn't confirmed yesterday morning. Yesterday evening, there was additional information that came to our attention that he was coming back to the state of California. But beyond that, we have no additional information at this point in time.
Will you compel the victim to testify if he turns uncooperative? Will you compel him to testify if he becomes uncooperative?
No reason to answer that question.
Mr. Sneddon, did you find anything you were looking for?
We're not going to comment on that. I will say this, excuse me a second, on the gentleman's question, I think the sheriff and I probably feel pretty comfortable saying this much. One of the things that, there's been a question about why so many people went in there and why we were there so long. One of the things that you have to, some of you are familiar, just looking at the aerials, that's a pretty huge complex. And we were authorized by the court to go in and video inside and out all of the buildings on the premises. And just, if you can imagine how long it took just to complete that process. Beyond that, we're not going to talk about anything else that was done out there at the premises.
Hold on a second.
I'm sorry?
Will a UFAP unlawful warrant to avoid prosecution warrant be issued if he does not return to California?
Of course.
Yes.
Mr. Sneddon, will you prosecute this yourself?
Investigation. Mr. Anderson?
Will you prosecute this yourself?
Yes, but not by myself.
Okay.
There'll be another lawyer from my office assigned to the
Would you be
case.
the lead chair on a case like this? I know your retirement's coming up. Would this be the last big case for you?
Not necessarily. And I wouldn't be the lead attorney when I do things with people in my office, which I've done before. We do it as co-counsel, as colleagues.
Okay, over here.
Anderson, have you sent sheriff's deputies to Las Vegas?
No, we have not.
Where have you sent?
We have been in communication with Las Vegas, but our personnel are not there at this time.
Does he have to surrender in California, or can you surrender it out of state? Can you surrender in Nevada?
I think the sheriff made that pretty clear where it was.
Is this going to be an expensive prosecution investigation for your county, and how are you going to handle that given the state's problem?
It's our job.
If Michael Jackson's watching this right now, or his people, your opportunity to tell him what you'd like, should he contact authorities immediately? What's your message to him?
Get over here and get checked in.
We would encourage him to turn himself in and cooperate with law enforcement. Yes.
All right, we've been listening to a news conference in California, getting a few more details about that arrest warrant, which has been issued for the pop star Michael Jackson on multiple counts of child molestation. A news conference that was perhaps significant for for all the questions that couldn't be answered, rather than getting answers to questions. But didn't get any more specific details there on the allegations, the name or names of the people that are making the claims against Jackson. The authorities have also said that Jackson, there are negotiations reportedly underway for Jackson to give himself up. He has also been asked to surrender his passport, and Jackson reportedly has hired a high-profile attorney who says that he will cooperate with the authorities in dealing with this case. We want to bring in Elise Graham now. She's a former federal prosecutor, and she joins us from Washington, D.C. to try and shed more light on this. Elise, give us your thoughts on what you've heard so far.
Well, from what I've heard, it sounds like he's trying to negotiate a surrender, and I think the first thing will be getting Michael Jackson's body in court so that they can, that's when they'll shed more light on these charges. There'll be a formal charge that he would have to answer to, and probably particularly if the victim is a minor, the victim's name will not be disclosed even at that point. So I think the very next step, and it sounds like they're working through Michael Jackson's lawyers to do this, but would be to get him to surrender so that he can have a hearing in court.
But in legal terms, multiple counts means that there's one or several, perhaps, people who are making these claims, or that there were more than one instance of these molestations taking place. Could it be more than one person?
It could certainly be more than one person, or it could be one person, more than one incident, or it could be one person and one incident, but different types of violations. So it's hard to know.
Don't want to sort of get into the realm of too much speculation here, but when you look at these kinds of cases, is there a genuine risk of flight here?
You know, it's hard to tell. You'd want to say with somebody who's as world famous as Michael Jackson that he would have sort of more to lose in life and his reputation and everything if he were to flee. So I would think he would not be considered a flight risk. And also these charges don't carry, you know, death penalty or a life imprisonment or anything like that. So I would think that for him, the best thing to do would be to just come and face the charges and let the legal system work them out. I think for all of those reasons, he would probably not be considered a flight risk, and that he would be given, you know, be released on bond, even if it's a high bond, and probably with some conditions that he shouldn't have contact with minors, or he shouldn't have contact with the people involved in the case, that type of thing, depending on what exactly the nature of the charges are.
And what would the implications be for his own children? Of course, he does have children.
You know, that is a good question, and it's really up to the judge. I mean, I guess first of all, it would depend on whether there was any allegation of their involvement in this. It doesn't sound like it just so far, but we don't know much. But certainly, it would be unusual, but it wouldn't be out of the question for a judge to issue orders that he should sort of stay away from certain people who he could be considered a danger to. So, although not a flight risk, he would be let out. You know, wouldn't be held in jail, but he might be kept apart from children, and it could include his own.
Well, we've heard similar allegations made against Michael Jackson in the past, but also during that news conference, one of the officials there said that the law is now different. Just can you, for the sense of our viewers, give us an idea of what he meant by that?
The law is different, I'm sorry, now as opposed to...
when these claims were made against Michael Jackson initially, he says that the law has now been changed, which I believe he was suggesting that it may involve some kind of testimony of a minor in a courtroom.
And I don't know specifically what he was referring to. There have been a lot of changes in this sort of setting over the years in terms of what types of information could come in, protecting the child's identity, that kind of thing. So I'm not sure specifically what he would mean.
And what are the pros and cons of, I mean, you're a former federal prosecutor, what are the pros and cons of trying to bring a case like this to court? What kind of evidence do you need to have? I mean, presumably physical evidence is going to be very, very important in a case like this.
Certainly, I would say physical evidence, and depending on the age of the child, you know, eyewitnesses, if the child isn't articulate enough or mature enough to describe what happened, at least in a reliable way, the physical evidence that you mentioned. And I would say in the case of such a high-profile celebrity as Mr. Jackson, a lot of what was said in the Kobe Bryant case is similar in that you would not want to see a prosecutor or police go lightly into this, what's definitely going to be a media circus and front-page news for a long time. So it suggests, at least off the bat, that they have, you would think they would have a strong case.
All right. Elise Gray, many thanks for joining us from Washington, D.C., and we're going to hand it back now to Michael.
We're actually going to take a short break. What we are going to do when we come back is look at the other major story of the day, and that is, of course, we actually are going to go to Suzanne Malveaux, who is traveling with the focus of the other big story of the day, that is the visit by the United States President George W. Bush to Great Britain. Suzanne.
Well, President Bush and the First Lady got the royal treatment earlier today. They were formally welcomed at Buckingham Palace by
co-stars outraged by molestation charges brought against him. Jackson surrendered to authorities in the U.S. state of California on Thursday. David Mattingly has more.
These charges are categorically untrue. His public defense is clearly already underway, but it would be months before Michael Jackson could see a jury.
So he will appear in court within the next several days and be arraigned, that is, advised of the charges against him. He'll be given an opportunity to enter a plea or to put his plea off.
Attorneys agree a jury trial would not be easy for someone so well known and caught so often in public scandal.
These statements about me are totally false.
Attorneys say it may be impossible to find 12 jurors unaware of the settlement with the young accuser in 1994 or the balcony incident in Germany in 2002. New questions about Jackson's children remain unanswered by county authorities.
A reasonable person, a children's service worker, might feel that because of the nature of the accusations made against Mr. Jackson, his children might likewise be in some sort of danger.
Local attorneys tell CNN that it is common for child welfare investigators to question children of the accused and their caretakers as soon as allegations surface. Jackson would retain custody if the county was satisfied that they were not in danger. David Mattingly, CNN, Santa Barbara, California.
Child molestation charges, and quoted Jackson as saying, "Lies run sprints, but the truth runs marathons." Jackson surrendered to California authorities on Thursday. He was booked, photographed, and released on $3 million bail. Jackson then returned to Las Vegas in the neighboring state of Nevada, where he was filming a music video. His arraignment has been set for January the 9th.
Well, some say that Jackson is already being tried in the court of public opinion, partly because of the media's extensive coverage. Well, Dr. Bruce Weinstein is an ethicist who has written an opinion column that doesn't cast the media in a favorable light in this story. He joins us now from New York to talk about it. Can't say I blame you. Is there any way, given the coverage of past indiscretions, alleged indiscretions, and behaviour, is going to give him the chance of getting a free and fair trial? How can the jury pool not be poisoned?
Michael Jackson is a terrible victim. He's a victim of a gross injustice. He has already been tried and convicted in the court of public opinion, and it is simply a travesty. Now, we in a democracy, not just in the United States, but democracies around the world, believe in one fundamental principle. People are innocent until proven guilty, but this intense media scrutiny will make it almost impossible for Michael Jackson to receive a fair trial. His past behavior should not convict him.
His past behaviour in a normal court of law isn't admissible, but in this case that's too late. Why do you think there's such intense media interest in this man, a man who, after all, hasn't been significantly on the charts for years?
You know, Alessandra Stanley in yesterday's New York Times wrote a fascinating article showing that whether Michael Jackson is singing or being paraded around in the various reports that we've seen this week, people are just fascinated by his behavior. Now, it has become increasingly bizarre over the years, and so we watch him almost like what Jeff Zucker of NBC Entertainment called a train wreck in motion. Just like when we're driving down the highway and we see a car wreck, we slow down, we rubberneck, we look at it. It's gruesome and yet fascinating at the same time. But we have to
coverage is one thing, but what I found interesting personally was the other day on many newscasts in the United States in particular, Michael Jackson led the bulletins, and further down was this huge terrorist attack in Turkey. Now, what's up with the priorities of the media in that sort of situation?
Well, exactly. And if you'll recall, the weekend of Princess Diana's funeral, there was one little blurb at the bottom of the screen that Mother Teresa had died. Now, you know, Princess Diana was a wonderful woman, a great leader, but, you know, if we had to compare saints, I mean, why would we give so little attention to Mother Teresa and so much attention to Princess Diana? Our priorities, our values are completely upside down. So what we have to do as responsible, intelligent viewers of the media is demand fairness in reporting, and also to demand of the media that people give coverage where coverage is due. And as you suggest, Michael, this intense circus surrounding Michael Jackson is ill-founded. There are simply other, more important stories going on, and yet this is all Michael all the time.
One thing that's interesting to me also is, do you think that the media turns lawyers into performers in these types of cases, and that the lawyers themselves lap it up, really?
Well, it's true, and if you'll recall what happened with O.J. Simpson, that launched a whole cottage industry, and many of the lawyers who were talking heads, they now have their own television shows. But this Michael Jackson trial is going to make the O.J. Simpson one look like small claims court. That was nothing compared to what we're about to see, and we have to, again,